There's a nurse in Oregon named Patricia who spent 23 years working in palliative care. She told me something once that I've never been able to forget. She said that in all those years, across hundreds of bedsides, she heard the same 4 sentences repeated over and over again. Not the exact words, of course, but the same 4 core regrets. And what haunted her most wasn't that people expressed them. It was how surprised they seemed, as if they'd been handed a script they'd never seen before, only to realize they'd been living it their entire lives. Patricia described it like this: in that final year, when the body begins its quiet retreat and the mind starts taking inventory, people don't regret what they did. They regret what they didn't do. They don't mourn their failures. They mourn their silence. And the strangest part, almost all of these regrets could have been addressed at any point, but they weren't, because we tell ourselves we have time, and then one day, we don't. If you're watching this, I want you to know something. This isn't a video designed to frighten you. It's designed to free you, because when you understand what people wish they had done differently, you give yourself the chance to live differently. Not someday, today. By the end of this conversation, you're going to hear the 4 biggest regrets that surface in those final 12 months. And more importantly, you're going to understand why they happen, what they cost us, and how you can begin to make peace with them while you still have the strength to act. Let's begin with the first one. The first regret is perhaps the most universal, and it sounds like this: I wish I had been braver about showing people who I really was. Think about Margaret. She's 78 now, living in a modest apartment in Michigan. For most of her life, she was known as the dependable one, the one who never complained, the one who smiled through everything. Her children thought she was content. Her friends thought she had it all figured out. But in her final year, after a diagnosis that narrowed her future into a countdown, she told her daughter something that broke both their hearts. She said, "I spent my whole life being the person everyone needed me to be. I never let anyone see the person I actually was." Margaret loved poetry. She wrote in secret journals for 40 years. She had opinions that were sharp and bold, but she softened them in conversation because she didn't want to seem difficult. She had dreams of traveling alone, of taking a train through Europe with nothing but a backpack and a notebook. But she never did, because it didn't fit the image of the woman everyone expected her to be. This regret isn't about grand reinvention. It's about authenticity. And here's the psychological mechanism behind it. As we age, especially in the final chapter, our identity becomes more precious. The masks we wore in our youth, constructed to gain approval, avoid conflict, or fit into roles, start to feel unbearably heavy. But by the time we realize this, we often feel it's too late to remove them. The people around us have only ever known the version we performed. To change now feels like betrayal, or worse, like admitting we've been lying all along. But here's the truth. The people who love you don't need your performance. They need your presence. They need the real you, even if it's messy, even if it's different from what they expected. Because connection cannot exist where authenticity does not. If you've spent your life hiding parts of yourself, your humor, your sadness, your strangeness, your desires, this is your permission to stop. Not in some dramatic unveiling, but in small, honest moments. Say the thing you've been holding back. Share the story you've kept private. Let people see you cry or laugh too loud or admit you're afraid. Because when the end comes, you will not regret being too much. You will only regret being too little. Does this resonate with you? If you've ever felt like you've worn a mask just to keep the peace, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. The second regret cuts even deeper, and it sounds like this: I wish I had told the people I loved how much they meant to me. Consider Robert. He was 81, a retired engineer, and he had 3 sons. He loved them fiercely, the way fathers do, but he'd been raised in a generation where love was demonstrated through provision, not words. He worked long hours. He paid for college. He showed up at games when he could, but he never said it, not once, not directly. In his final year, one of his sons came to visit. They sat on the porch in silence for a long time, and then Robert, almost inaudibly, said, "I don't know if you know this, but you made my life worth living." His son started to cry, and Robert said, "I should have told you that 50 years ago." Here's the mechanism. We assume love is understood. We believe that if we act with love, the words are redundant. But language holds a power that action alone cannot achieve. Words create permanence. They become memories you can replay. And in the final year of life, when people look back, they realize that the moments they treasured most were not the gifts or the gestures. They were the sentences. The "I'm proud of you," the "you changed me," the "I see you." We withhold these words for many reasons. Sometimes it's cultural conditioning. Sometimes it's fear that vulnerability will weaken us. Sometimes it's simply that we've said it so rarely we don't know how to start. But silence creates a void. And in that void, people make assumptions. They assume they were not enough. They assume their presence didn't matter. And when you're gone, they are left holding questions that can never be answered. So here's what I want you to do. Think of one person, just one. Someone who shaped your life, who held you when you were breaking, who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. And say it, out loud, in a letter, in a phone call. It doesn't have to be poetic. It just has to be true. Because one day you won't have the chance, and they won't either. And that silence will echo louder than any words you were too afraid to say. There's another shift most people don't expect, and it leads us to the third regret. This one is quieter, but it runs just as deep. I wish I had forgiven the people who hurt me and let go of the anger I carried. Let me tell you about Donna. She's 74, and for 32 years she didn't speak to her sister. It started with an argument over an inheritance. A small one, honestly, in the scope of a lifetime. But both women were proud, both women were hurt, and neither wanted to be the first to bend. In Donna's final year, after a stroke left her weak and reflective, she asked her daughter to find her sister. When they finally sat together, Donna cried. Not because of what had been lost, though that was part of it, but because she realized something that devastated her. She had spent 3 decades feeding a grudge that her sister had let go of years ago. She had been carrying weight that no one asked her to hold. Here's what happens in the aging brain and heart. Resentment doesn't fade with time. It calcifies. It becomes part of your identity. You tell the story so many times to yourself, to others, that it becomes a cornerstone of who you are. The person who was betrayed, the person who was wronged. And while that identity gives you a sense of rightness, it also traps you. In the final year, when your mind begins sorting what matters, you realize that rightness is cold comfort. It doesn't keep you warm. It doesn't bring you peace. And the cost of holding on to it, years of connection, of laughter, of shared memory, suddenly seems unbearable. Forgiveness is not about excusing harm. It's not about pretending something didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let the past steal your present. And in that final year, people see this with brutal clarity. They see that the anger they nurtured, the grudges they protected, didn't harm the people they were aimed at. They only harmed themselves. If there is someone you've cut off, someone whose name brings a heaviness to your chest, I want you to ask yourself this. Do you want to be right? Or do you want to be free? You don't have to reconcile. You don't have to rebuild the relationship. But you can release it. You can stop giving it space in your mind. You can decide that today is the day you stop carrying something that was never yours to hold. And this leads us to a truth that is often harder to accept than any of the others. The fourth regret, the one that sits heaviest on the heart, sounds like this. I wish I had lived a life that was mine, not the one everyone else expected of me. Think about Samuel. He's 76, a retired accountant. He never wanted to be an accountant. He wanted to be a carpenter. He loved working with his hands, the smell of wood, the satisfaction of building something real. But his father told him that was a hobby, not a career. So Samuel went to college, got his degree, and spent 40 years behind a desk doing work that bored him. In his final year, he built one piece of furniture, a small table. It took him weeks because his hands shook and his vision was failing. But when he finished it, he sat in his workshop and wept, because it was the first time in his entire adult life that he'd done something purely because it made him feel alive. This regret isn't always about career. Sometimes it's about staying in a town you hated because your family was there. Sometimes it's about sacrificing your own dreams to support someone else's. Sometimes it's about living small because you were afraid people would judge you for wanting more. The mechanism here is fear compounded by time. In youth, we make compromises. We tell ourselves it's temporary. We say we'll pursue our real desires later, once things settle, once we've saved enough, once the kids are grown. But later keeps moving, and eventually you look up and realize you've built an entire life around other people's definitions of success, safety, and respectability. And in the final year, when you're too tired to pretend anymore, you see it all clearly. The trips you didn't take, the risks you didn't accept, the person you might have been if you'd been just a little bit braver. Here's what people in that final year say. I didn't fail because I tried and fell short. I failed because I never tried at all. If this one surprised you, I'd love to hear your thoughts below, because I know this is the one that lives in so many of us, quietly, like a shadow we're afraid to name. But here's the good news. If you're hearing this now, you still have time. You still have time to write the book, to take the trip, to change the career, to leave the relationship that's draining you, to start the hobby everyone said was impractical, to say no to the things you've been doing out of obligation, and yes to the things that light you up. Will it be easy? No. Will people understand? Maybe not. But I promise you this. When you reach your final year, you will not regret the things you did that scared you. You will only regret the things you didn't do because you were too afraid of what people might think. So let me ask you something. What is the one thing you've been putting off? The one dream you've been whispering to yourself in the dark? The one you're afraid to say out loud? That's the thing you need to do. Not someday. Now. While your hands still work. While your heart still beats, while you still have the chance to become the person you were always meant to be. Now let's talk about what all 4 of these regrets have in common. They are not about things that happened to people. They are about choices people didn't make. And that's the paradox of the final year. It's not filled with regret over bad decisions. It's filled with regret over indecision, over waiting, over silence. And the reason this matters so much is because it reveals something hopeful. You're not powerless. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect circumstances. You just need to begin. Begin the conversation you've been avoiding. Begin the project you've been delaying. Begin the healing you've been resisting. Begin the life you've been postponing. Because the final year is not when life gets serious. Life is serious now. This moment, this breath, this choice. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to invite you to join this community, not because I need you to subscribe, but because I believe you deserve a space where these conversations happen, where we talk honestly about aging, about meaning, about living fully in the time we have left. If that resonates with you, I'd be honored to have you here. Here's what I want you to remember. The people who shared these regrets in their final year weren't weak. They weren't foolish. They were human. They lived the way most of us live, hoping there would be more time, believing the difficult conversations could wait, assuming the people they loved already knew. But time is the one thing none of us can negotiate with. And the final year has a way of clarifying what we spent a lifetime avoiding. So I'm going to leave you with this. Imagine yourself 1 year from the end. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, looking back on your life. What do you see? What do you feel? And most importantly, what do you wish you had done? Now come back to today, to this moment, to this choice. You are not in that final year yet. You still have the power to act, to speak, to forgive, to live. Don't wait until it's too late to become the person you've always wanted to be. Don't wait until your voice is too weak to say the words that matter. Don't wait until your hands are too frail to build the life you've been dreaming of. Start today. Start now. Start with one small, brave choice, because when your final year comes, and it will come for all of us, you will not be counting your regrets. You'll be remembering your courage, and you'll know deeply and peacefully that you lived a life that was truly yours. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for choosing right now to live a little more bravely.